stiff change. She mentions the example of Samaranch in her book. Now, if you read the book, you'll realize it's not to say that he was kind of unsuccessful, but in the last 5 years of his tenure, and he was at the helm of IOC for about 20 years, a pretty long time. During the last 5 years, what happened was all these drug abuses started taking place. There was a lot of corruption which was happening. IOC officials going to different countries or participating countries were probably accepting a lot of favors which were not kind of listed out in their code of conduct. And unfortunately, what happened, what played out was Mr. Samaranch decided to look the other way. He did not take any action. And that's what she refers to as incompetent leadership. It's something more than you can handle probably. Rigid leadership. The leader and at least some followers are stiff and unyielding. She refers to Mary Meeker. Now, Mary Meeker, many of us wouldn't know about her, but she was an opinion leader in the stock market in the US, and she was at the time of the internet. The internet bubble happened, many years back, and before that, a lot of stocks had kind of increased in value by multiples. And Mary Meeker was one lady who was an opinion leader, and if she said that buy this stock, everybody used to buy. So, and she became a very, very powerful kind of person in the Wall Street. Now, what happened was that some of her understandings about the internet business at a certain point of time was not correct. It went wrong. Now, what Mary Meeker did not do was, Mary Meeker did not say to people that this is not probably the right time to buy, or put the right advice across. She still hung on to her opinion that these stocks are the stocks to kind of put your money in. Now, what happened was when the bubble happened, it's not only people it's not about Wall Street. A lot of people, a lot of innocent people like you and me who probably would have put their money into stocks, lost money. Now, what happened was probably she could have done better. Probably she could have read the situation much more better, and would have been a much better opinion leader than she actually turned out to be. She was still retained in the organization she was working in, right? But there were, after this internet bubble happened, there were a lot of reports in Forbes, the Forbes magazine, which were kind of extremely negative about her. So there were questions like, can we trust these kind of people who are opinion leaders? Will they really lead us, or they will lead us astray? So that's the example of it. There are many other examples. In fact, I don't remember all of them, which are mentioned in the book. Then there's a third category which she mentions is intemperate leadership. The leader lacks self-control and is aided and abetted by followers who are unwilling or unable to effectively to intervene. She mentions of Marion Barry Jr. This is also, he's also a person whom we do not probably know. He was the mayor of Washington, D.C., and he was kind of elected for about 5 years continuously. What happened after the third year was it was discovered that this person probably didn't have a lot of self-control. Probably, a little bit of drugs, a little bit of women, so all these were there around him. But that's the way it is, how even after these kind of attributes were discovered, people again re-elected him. And it's not that Washington DC, as a county, did very well. It was not doing well. But despite that, the people kind of re-elected him for whatsoever reason. There are a lot of positives around, positive stories around Marion Barry Jr. But the point here is that even if we see that there are certain things which are wrong about a leader, even as a community we fail to act. And that's how such kind of leadership is kind of encouraged. Then she comes to the unethical part of the leadership. So this is the unethical part of the bad leadership, what she describes. Callous. The leader and at least some followers are uncaring or unkind. She mentions about Al Dunlap. Now, Al Dunlap was the CEO of Scott Paper, and then he was the CEO of Sunbeam Corporation. He was a turnaround specialist. So when he was in Scott, he kind of turned around the organization majorly by cost cutting. Okay. Rampant cost cutting. Now this approach of his did not work when he went to Sunbeam. When he went to Sunbeam, in fact what happened was, he not only drove out hundreds of people from that organization, and when I mention hundreds of people, some of these people in some of the factories, where the factory was located, it was almost like a village. The whole village was kind of employed there. So which means the village economy was dependent on, what was being done in the factory, right? So removing all of them in one go or shutting down the plant means you are probably affecting an entire town. And what is also very kind of interesting about Dunlop is that he has had many photographs which were published. In one photograph, in fact, it's kind of, I would say, horrible according to me, where he is kind of holding two guns in his hand, and he has two leather straps around him, and all are full of bullets, and he calls him Chainsaw Dunlop. That's what he believes in. He fundamentally probably believed in, affecting people. He cut costs, he drove out people, he didn't listen to anybody. And ultimately what happened was he was selling all the wrong stories to the investors, that things will improve, better things are going to come. It never happened with Sunbeam. But in the process, if you look at the impact, lot of people with no fault of theirs probably got affected. Corrupt. I have not put an example because I think there are too many examples of corrupt leaders, so I have not put any example. The leader or at least some followers lie, cheat or steal. So this is, in our political scenario, probably we know a lot, so I did not probably discuss this. Now coming to another interesting prescription is insular leadership. The leader or at least some followers minimize or disregard the health and welfare of the other. Just notice the term the other. Those outside the group or organization for which they are directly responsible. And she mentions the example, again it's a kind of political example, she mentions the example of Bill Clinton. Now what went wrong with Bill Clinton? What she mentions is that, I don't know how, I think it was the year 1994, somewhere around that. Many of you might be aware of the Rwanda genocide. Now what happened exactly in the Rwanda genocide? Just to give you a idea about the scale of destruction which happened, in 4 days, 8 lakh people were killed. In 4 days. Now the American government knew about it, that something like this is happening. Because at a point in time, UN peacekeepers were kind of evacuated from that place. But they decided to shut their eyes. Now, many years later, when President Clinton was visiting Rwanda, he apologized to the people of Rwanda and he said, we should have done much more. But there's a problem with this statement also. He mentions the word we. He doesn't mention I. So when it comes to success, it's individual. When it comes to failure, it's collective. So, I mean, this is not very good. So, and this is an typical example of insular leaders. And don't we see insular leaders in our everyday life? I think we do. There are a lot of people, there are a lot of leaders in, at least in the business world. I would not hesitate defining them as this. Evil. The leader or at least some followers commit atrocities. Here, probably the best example of, which we have already discussed is of Adolf Hitler. Now, there was in fact, it's mentioned in the book also. In fact, when Professor Kellerman was kind of addressing an audience on leadership, and she mentioned about Adolf Hitler. In fact, she's written an essay, The Ghost of Hitler, I think, if I'm not wrong. And she mentioned that, Hitler is a bad leader. So somebody raised a hand in the, from the crowd and said, Hitler is not a bad leader, Hitler was a damn effective leader. Which is true. Hitler, if you look at this whole process in terms of means and ends, if you look at the end result, what Hitler wanted to, or set out to achieve, he probably did that. But probably the means that was used in achieving these objectives was probably questionable. So this person was absolutely right when he said that, Hitler is a damn effective leader. He was, in certain ways he was a damn effective leader. But in certain ways, he was a terrible leader also.
Just interrupt. There is a drama in Marathi.
Okay.
On this.
I see.
And the comparison, everyone is going to get angry with you. But the drama is Hitler and Mahatma Gandhi. The means to their end, they used were different, but the end was the same.
Right.
There was a Holocaust in Bengal, and this thing with Ahimsa, and with his violent methods, he destroyed Germany. sorry.